surface, of course, you know, it's hidden by a mountain range, and you can see sort of this is the dry lake right here. You can see a water tower up here, and some hangars and some trailer-like housing right here. And then over here you see like a dish, like a satellite dish sticking straight up on a pylon. And I do have a blow-up of this, and this area right here now has been identified as S4. But again, the bulk of the facility is underground. All the work that takes place is underground. There's only been one former employee come forward to admit that funny things were going on there, strange things. His name is Bob Lazar. Mr. Lazar circulated the story for a number of years that we were reverse engineering alien technology that was captured or given to us. Mr. Lazar has been largely discredited. Now that could be intentional or it could be true, but he has a rather lengthy rap sheet, as they say. So nobody really knows, again, what's going on there. We only know for a fact that the facility does exist. Now this is an overhead view. This came from a Russian spy satellite. The Russians are selling anything. They'll sell you anything for dollars today. You can get just about anything you want, and I'm going to show you something later on that's really going to shock you. It was purchased for $1 million, and a movie was made out of it, and it was called the Alien Autopsy film. But anyway, this is an overhead view of Area 51. This is the dry lake. These are a lot of the structures around there. I'm not really sure what this is going across here. Could be a long-wave antenna or perhaps some sort of above-ground pipeline or electrical line or something like this. Also, Area 51, if you do perchance get on the property, you're not going to get very far. Number one, Wackenhut Corporation, which is really a CIA front company, is responsible for security. And these are a tough bunch of buggers. You just don't want to mess with them. But how they figure out that you're there, of course the terrain is very tough, so you don't want to go tromping around there with all the rattlesnakes and everything. But there's a lot of these strange looking things that are hard to distinguish from cacti. If you blow it up though, you see that it doesn't quite look like a cactus. It's got an antenna and some dishes attached to it. My suspicion it's either some sort of microwave or infrared or millimeter wave device that detects images and movement or heat. They also, down in the ground, have sensors that can actually detect the ammonia being emitted from your body. So if you try to sneak in there, like I said, you're not going to get very far. Now they've had people spying, outside people spying on this area for some time, so what they did is they got tired of it, so they just bought up all the land around there. So now there's just virtually no access to Area 51, and I have not seen any new pictures recently of Area 51 since they seized especially Whitesides Mountain, which is where most of the investigative journalists went to photograph the area. Now, what are some of the things we know that are going on at Area 51? Well, the development of our latest super secret, which I guess since I'm telling you it's not so secret now, spy plane called Aurora. This replaced the SR-71 Blackbird, which was on the drawing board, because I want to give you kind of a timeline here. The SR-71 Blackbird was on the drawing board in 1958. In 1960s, it was put into production. It began flying in the 1970s. They retired it in the late 80s, and replaced it with the Aurora. And how they found out about the Aurora was that apparently they were testing it over the Pacific Ocean, and it would fly in on a specific track across Palm Springs, and at 10 o'clock every morning, on Thursday mornings, they would have a quake. But it wasn't an earthquake, it was a skyquake. So they figured out it must have been something coming from the air. And they also noticed, you know, the vapor trails behind the airplanes. Well, they looked much differently than the normal vapor trails. These look like what they call donuts on a rope. So it's using some sort of unique and advanced propulsion system. But this thing is ostensibly or estimated to be a Mach 5 aircraft, which puts it about 3,500 miles per hour, which could put you in New York to, or Los Angeles to New York in about 30 minutes or less. So it's a pretty fast craft, and it was used in the in the Gulf War. The last thing I want to show you is some of the more exotic things that may be taking place out there. These are the flying boomerangs, and these things have been seen for about the past 4 or 5 years, and now they're seeing them a lot of times over major cities, including Houston. I got a call one night from a news correspondent, and he said, "You've got to get down to the Shell building. There's an engineer down there that swears he's seeing a UFO." And I says, "Well, what does it look like?" And he said, "Well, it looks like a big flying boomerang." So I drove down there. By the time I got there, of course, it had already disappeared. And we talked for a while, and the guy was very lucid and sane. The guy's an engineer, never claimed to have seen anything unusual before, but he said he was getting in early for a meeting, and he saw this thing descend out of the sky, hover over the Shell building for about 15 minutes silently, and then go straight back up. And again, these things have been seen all over the United States and other continents. In my opinion, these are our most advanced aeroforms that we have right now. And they probably are powered by some sort of anti-gravity or field dampening system. Now, my belief is that in the not too distant future, they will eventually unveil these to the American public. And there is some suggestion that this is going to be done very, very soon. Recently we had an incident in Phoenix, Arizona, where something very strange was seen, and it might have been one of these flying boomerangs. In addition to Area 51, there are a number of other super secret facilities around the United States, and I want to go through these briefly. Los Alamos and Sandia, Brookhaven, Lawrence Livermore, Stanford Research Institute, and the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Now, each of these facilities are very significant in terms of their relationship to the national security establishment. For example, Dulce, New Mexico, which is in the northernmost part of the state, is the alleged site of suspected advanced genetic research and engineering programs. There's been a lot of discussion and rumor and innuendo about the existence or the non-existence of the site. Some people claim that it doesn't exist. Many people come forward and say that they know, they've seen documentation. This is the site of our most advanced genetics research. Now we know, and we've read in the newspaper recently, that we've been doing cloning. We've seen stories about sheep being cloned. We've seen stories about even primates being cloned. Do you think that humans have been cloned yet? My guess is that they have. Dulce would probably be the logical site of this type of activity, since again this is an underground facility. Supposedly it is 7 stories down, And depending upon the level is how advanced the research projects are. There's one level